We love being uncomfortable because that means we're growing. That means we are tapping into a layer of us that needs healing, that needs adjusting, that needs shifting. So we want to feel that way.
And that part of us that's really thriving, that's really living life. If you live in a little safety bubble, it's not exciting. It's not fun. That's your humdrum, like, yep, I'm getting by. Yep, things are okay.
Hey, Soul Warriors, we want to welcome you to our podcast. Soul Intentions is here to drop the wisdom, tools, and real life experiences that helped us transform our lives so that we can shine without the struggle. We want to share everything we have learned so that you can do the same.
Welcome, Soul Warriors, to episode 11 of Evolve and Repeat. Evolve or repeat. I guess you can evolve and repeat because you keep evolving in higher and higher ways.
This is true.
All right, that's a good little mistake right there. Evolve or repeat, your choice. And today we are talking about vulnerability. It is the new strength. It is sexy. It is not talked about a lot.
Yeah.
We're calling this one armor to authenticity. Because those walls that you put up to protect yourself, that's like your armor, your shield. A lot of people call it their mask.
Yeah.
It's you not being authentically yourself. And you all know that we like to start with the actual definition of things. Yep. So I wanted to read vulnerability. The actual definition is the state of being exposed to the possibility of being attacked or harmed.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So vulnerability, everybody's like, oh, it's a weakness. You're just being emotional.
Yeah, that's what I hear a lot. I hear a lot of people saying that when they are quote unquote vulnerable, they feel like they're being weak. And that's so not true.
It is so not true. It's how we create intimacy. It's what we actually crave in all relationships and all experiences. So the fact that you continue to shield and put those walls up, those walls protect you emotionally, physically, spiritually, but they also block your joy. So we really want you to hear that. Like, this is something that the more you lean into it, the more uncomfortable you get.
Yep. And we like being uncomfortable. Remember that. We love being uncomfortable because that means we're growing. That means we are tapping into a layer of us that needs healing, that needs adjusting, that needs shifting. So we want to feel that way.
And that part of us that's really thriving, that's really living life. If you live in a little safety bubble, it's not exciting. It's not fun. That's your humdrum, like, yep, I'm getting by. Yep, things are okay. Like,
yeah, I mean, someone once told me, and I think I've said this before, that they said to me, and I've kept it for years, you learn more in 10 minutes than you do in 10 years of pain.
oh, absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
10 minutes of pain versus 10 years of
exactly
easy happiness.
Exactly. That 10 minutes of pain, it's what catapults you to so many different things because you're open. You're able to shift real time from our last podcast. And, you're just able to really take in the change. And if you're happy for 10 years, which is great, but you're not learning, you're comfortable. You're in that zone where it's just like, okay, I like it here because I don't have to deal with shit. I don't have to do anything. And it just feels good.
And there's a difference between what she's talking about is the happy that, like, everything's okay. I have a house.
Yeah.
I have a relationship. Like, we're talking about not being joyful. If you're joyful every day, you're doing vulnerability and you're doing it right.
Totally.
And the pain part she's talking about is the discomfort in either not being vulnerable or that initial perceived that it's going to be painful if I'm vulnerable.
Right.
But we've coached so many people and we've seen that when they get vulnerable, they feel lighter. They feel happier. They feel less anxious. They feel less overwhelmed. They feel more joy, more ease, more grace, more empathy. They have more respect for themselves. So why wouldn't you want to be uncomfortable for a little while to get to that other
It's scary
side?
for people. That's why.
It's scary. Especially in today's world, because today's world is so super sensitive about everything and super critical about nitpicking and dividing everybody.
Right.
But so how can we be craving. It's a natural human need for connection and to be together. So how can we crave that, but then be out here dividing everybody and judging everybody and pigeonholing everybody?
Right.
I mean, the ultimate vulnerability for us is getting on this podcast every day and then hitting the go live button on YouTube, because we're putting all of ourselves out. And like, I like to say, fuck, I swear. That's me. That's who I am. At the beginning, when we first started recording, I was like trying to censor myself and not swear. And I'm like, fuck that. This is who I am.
Exactly.
And if you don't like it, that's cool. There's other people that don't swear that you can go listen to and get the same message in your language. But I have to be all of me, because if I'm not showing up authentically, you're going to feel that and you're going to know that.
Right. And it's like, for me, I'm a little rough around the edges, city kid, and grew up in the projects and did all those things. And, it's just like, I'm very rough around the edges. And when I speak, you can tell. And I too was in a place where it's like, I'm not going to say anything because people just take me wrong. And, I quickly got out of that, which leads me into the whole vulnerability thing, because, I made a conscious choice to see a life coach. And boy, did I have to be vulnerable.
Raw.
Oh my goodness. The best thing I ever did, though, because I felt like I needed to level up, and I just didn't know where I was getting stuck. And this person helped me out immensely. His name is Dallas
Michael Sear, look him up.
Yes, he's awesome coach.
He's amazing. And he created a safe space for her to
did.
drop that armor.
Yes.
Because she's had other coaches that she, we always get something out of stuff, but she's had other, like a coach that identified that you had the armor up, and that was the problem.
Yes.
And then you had to sit with that a while, because you're like, fuck that. No, I'm me. Like, and then slowly she was like, okay. And then she found Dallas, who is this spiritual warrior in his own right that can hold that space and provide that safety to drop
and that's
the
the kind of energy I bring to the table.
Exactly.
I have a very warrior-ish like energy, i.e. the armor part of things. But when I sat in vulnerability, when I was being coached, it felt like that armor was coming down, not necessarily because I was using it to repel things, but I had it because that's just the warrior in me, and I finally was felt like I was given the permission to put the shield down, to put the sword down, so that I can be vulnerable and really dig deep into the shit that was keeping me in a certain level that I didn't want to be in anymore. Exactly. I really opened up to it, and not once did I feel like I was in a weak space. I felt raw and open, and it didn't feel that great, but it did at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, you
it
gotta
was really
see,
confusing to me.
when you tap into that courage, it takes complete courage and strength to just bare your soul.
Yeah.
I mean, that's badass. That is not weak by any chance.
No. And I don't think that we give vulnerability a chance a lot of the time. Again, because we see it as weakness. And that is why we're here. To kind of, we need to rewrite the story and what vulnerability is. There's a lot of freaking power in being vulnerable. Brene Brown likes to, she's the master in this stuff. And she talks about it being a superpower. Yeah. Until you've let all that stuff out and in. That's when you really hit that sweet spot. There's a lot of growth in that. Oh my goodness. Never mind really finding out your core.
Yeah, the more you know yourself, the easier and easier vulnerability gets, and the more vulnerable you are, the more you know yourself. So it's like it all walks hand in hand.
It's a beautiful cycle, that's for sure. Yeah.
And we want to caution you that vulnerability doesn't mean oversharing. That's your ego. That's you making it all about you. Because we've heard people say, oh, but I told that person like everything about how mad I was and what they did and how that made me feel. And, I was vulnerable. I bared all of it. And then I got an attitude and it's just this perpetual icky story that doesn't feel good. And it didn't end up in a positive way in their mind because they showed up to get that stuff out of their system instead of saying, okay, let me back up to there's 2 ways that you can express yourself and 2 ways that people express themselves, either from love or from pain, one or the other. So when you're in pain and you want to be vulnerable and speak to somebody, you need to do it. You don't need to. The best way to do it is from love. So approach somebody with, I love you. And I want to take this in the most loving direction I can. I'm in a lot of pain right now. I'm in a lot of pain. Not you caused me pain. I'm in a lot of pain right now. So I'm going to put it out in the most loving way that I possibly can. And if I start to go off the rails a little bit, like I'm going to try to catch myself, or can you just hold space? I can just get it out. But don't get it out in an attacking, a demeaning way of the other person or of yourself. Because one of the biggest reasons that we're not vulnerable is because it's a safety issue. So it's a trust issue. You either don't trust the other person to create a safe space for you. What that ultimately means is you haven't figured out how to create a trust with yourself, how to create a safe space for you.
I want to give you a quick message before we get back to this episode. Unlock the secrets of your soul for free with Soul Notes. Say goodbye to feeling stuck and hello to the validation of your alignment. These weekly prompts are filled with reminders, gentle nudges, and sometimes a kick in the ass, all with love from your soul. Don't just take our word for it. Try Soul Notes for yourself and see the difference it can make in your life. Trust us, your soul and you will thank you. Just go to soulnote.org. That's SOULNOTE.org. Now back to our podcast.
Space for you. So you need to build that trust with yourself that I can catch myself. I'm a loving person. I can put things out in a loving way. Doesn't mean it has to be a happy, sugar-coated message. Again, you still speak about your pain. You still speak about your truth. You still speak about how you're feeling or felt. So you can clear the air and be authentic.
Yeah, for sure. While you were talking, I was thinking about, the people I come in contact with. And I see a lot of them when they're speaking or trying out being more vocal, it's usually from that pain point.
Yeah. Or from the ego point.
Yeah, because it's like the stuff that comes out of their mouth is just like, it's very for lack of a better word, very low vibration, because they're scared. The ego also, the ego is the scariest thing.
The ego is there to protect you.
It really gets scared a lot of the times.
Yep.
If you try to change shit, your ego is gonna no.
No, this is how that person does this, and this is how it's full of expectations. Yeah. It tries to shove you back in the box.
And it doesn't like being vulnerable.
It doesn't like being vulnerable. That's why if you go back and listen to our mindset podcast, I think it was seven or eight, something like that. Look it up. It says mindset. If you go into the mindset stuff, it helps you subtly shift so that then you just have new programming and the ego has a new framework, a new bigger box that it's now operating from. So it's not such a fight all the time to try to get out of that, because you don't want to be in a me place. You want to be in a we place.
Right.
We, not me. So I'm not being vulnerable with you right now just for me, just to get it out of me. I'm doing it for us because I needed to get it out, and I love you and I want you to know me, or I don't know you yet and I want you to know me. I want you to understand me because I don't want to hold this mask. I don't want to hold this shield up all the time. It's fucking heavy and it doesn't feel good. It constricts my soul. So I want to let this stuff down because it's easier. It's easy to be you. It is hard to carry and put that mask on all the time and carry all this I have to be like this with this person and that with that person.
Yeah. And the thing that we want to impress upon you is that when you're vulnerable, you're literally creating a safe space, not only for yourself, but for the people around you.
Exactly.
It will give them the opportunity to be equally vulnerable with you because they'll feel safe. They see you being vulnerable, they can be vulnerable. That means it's cool. You know what I'm saying? And imagine in a conversation where you're both being vulnerable and listening and shifting and allowing and growing. Come on now.
Yeah. So let's talk about sex for a second here.
Oh, okay.
Because you want to talk,
sex.
yeah, right? The ultimate place that we are vulnerable is when we're having sex with somebody.
Hell yeah.
That's why the connections feel so deep, and you can get attached really easy because you're so preoccupied with what you're doing and feeling good that you're not worrying about all the, maybe some people still are worrying about it, but when you're with somebody and it's really good, you start forgetting all that crap. All that, the shame and the body image stuff and the negative self-talk, it like starts to fall away when you're really in the moment with that.
Right.
So it is powerful. So that's the kind of energy, that pure connection that we want to bring to regular life, to everyday interactions. And if the person that you're talking to, you're like, I've created a safe space and I'm being vulnerable and they're not doing it back. Maybe they're not just there yet. Maybe they've never experienced being in a safe space with somebody else. And they're like, yeah, is this person for real?
Yeah.
Like, it takes a while.
Oh my God, I've gotten that comment so many times.
Right?
I've gotten that. Are you for real? Or people don't talk the way you talk.
There's nobody else like you. You're special. You're different. You become the special friend, the person that people go to.
It's like, listen, be you. You know, be you, be as vulnerable as you need to be as open as you need to be, and everything else will fall into place, and the things that don't serve you will fall out of place, which that's what you want. I mean, that's the bottom line. When you're vulnerable, you have the capability to just allow things to come into your space and change it. You know, do whatever you need to do that's going to be good for you and serve you. And then all the other things will fall away. Now imagine you being, you know, you're in this space and you're comfortable with being vulnerable and all those things, and the situation arises. You have the solid freaking foundation to be able to maneuver in that space.
Exactly.
And that's what you want. Listen, the less reactive we are and the more proactive is the best way we want to be, you know, and being vulnerable is part of that, you know, and really see it as it being a superpower because it really empowers you. I mean, I can't express enough how wonderful it felt. You know, like I said earlier, it was confusing at the same time because I was raw and, you know, I was snot crying and like you name it. I mean, I went in deep, you know, and at the moment it's just like, oh my God, I don't like feeling this way. But at the end of it, the relief, oh my God, the relief was awesome, which made me want to do it more and more and more and more until I got to the core of what was keeping me in that certain space. I mean, you can't fucking go wrong there, man.
So, I mean, if it's a therapist, if it's your best friend who's not going to just feed you what you want to hear. I mean, the best friend that's going to like tell you the real deal, raw truth. A therapist, a coach, like we all have one person in our lives, usually, if not start looking for that person, that person that you think is different, that person that's not like everybody else, that person that you even accidentally feel safe with. We had a situation, we were away and we had somebody with us and I started doing something because I don't like to be cold.
Right.
So I started to do something and the person that was with us started to do it too. And then we were all hanging out and after a little bit she expressed that, you know, I never do that. I don't feel comfortable doing that and I'm having a good time. And it was like we all kind of like lit up.
Yeah.
And it made it more fun and more I don't know, the connection was just beautiful. The opening was beautiful. And the fact that just like me doing something that's just me being me, instead of doing what everybody else was doing, because that was, the herd mentality of it.
Right.
I did what felt best for me. Coincidentally, accidentally, incidentally created a space for somebody else to be like, I'm going to try being me too.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to ease myself into something instead of just shoving myself full on in. And it worked. And it was just, it creates those moments and spaces just by you allowing your vulnerability to come out.
Yeah.
So if you can find that person where you can practice being vulnerable with, because you know that they're always vulnerable because they're real and honest with you, practice, 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 and then start doing it with other people around you. And again, don't expect that same interaction you have with that person that's already really good at vulnerability, that lives in that space.
Yeah.
This is your opportunity to experience that you can still rely on yourself and you can still trust yourself and be vulnerable even when people don't understand you, even when people maybe don't agree with you, even if people have not grown to the space that you've grown to.
Right.
That's all okay. We're all on different journeys. We're all at different places, different frequencies. So this is not about like, I'm going to present this so that we can meet here. Hopefully you do meet here. Hopefully your frequencies do match up, or the most beautiful situation happens around you. But it's not always going to be that case, and that's okay. That's the beauty and ups and downs of life.
Yeah, for
so
sure.
it's not just a strength if you're successful, and it's a weakness if you're a failure. Those are you putting labels on shit. That's your ego again trying to shove you back in that box.
Right. That's. I think the fear of failure is real, and it.
Fear of judgment.
Exactly. And it coincides with being vulnerable. You have to be vulnerable to sit in that place where you feel fearful. Yeah. But when you're in that vulnerability and also feeling fear, you're open to change. That's the part that a lot of us don't realize. When we're sitting in that space where we feel like we're like, oh my God, I'm exposed. Yep. It's the most open you'll ever be. And it's the best time for change. You get to change the story. You get to change your everything pretty much, because you're allowing all the things that need to come in because you're open.
You're allowing to live from your soul, from your
Yes.
spirit, instead of merely existing in the human body that
we're strong human beings. I can't impress upon you enough how strong we all really truly are. When we are in our sovereignty, we are the strongest we can ever possibly be. And vulnerable at the same time. So imagine that.
And employing grace is huge in all of this, because a lot of times when you present,
I still need a little work with that. I'm not the most graceful person on the planet. You are, though.
I can shift into that easily, because that's the caretaker empathy part of me.
Yeah.
So if I'm presenting as all of me, and the other person, you think that they're not being vulnerable because they're responding to you from pain, but they are, because they're actually letting their pain out.
Right.
So like, I honor that. Like if I see somebody else in pain, I'm not going to diminish how I'm feeling or what's going on for me. But at the same time, I'm going to acknowledge that they just told me that, they were scared, or they were afraid, or they're really angry, or they're just lashing out because they're hurting. I'm not taking that personally. I'm actually like, hey, that's a win for me, because they're actually, I can see where they're at. I can see how deep in pain that they are.
Yeah.
And if I'm not taking that in and taking that personally, and I'm honoring that, like, oof, okay, that person needs love. And it's not like, oh, I'm going to love and light you to death, and it's okay, and the soothing crap. I mean, if that's appropriate, if the person needs a hug, fucking give them a hug. That's fine.
Right.
But I mean, grace is not glossing something over. Grace is if you're really feeling it in your heart and your soul that you want to be loving to this person, then by all means. Like I had somebody who was, as they put it, making up stories in their head about me and spreading them to a lot of people in community and that I was in at the time. And because it boiled down to, she told me that she was insecure and had a lot of insecurities with herself. And as soon as I heard that, and I'm like, oh, that right there, that has nothing to do with you. I mean, did it affect me? Yep, as much as I let it.
And that's the key. As much as
I let it. Because the friends that I'm not connected with, the community I'm not connected with, the people that I don't talk to anymore, if they believed that bullshit after knowing me for well over a decade and a half, then I don't need them in my life.
Right.
Or if they didn't feel the place to have a conversation with me about it, if they did believe it, I don't need them in my life.
Right.
So, I mean, I just let things fall where they may. I didn't have to go, I didn't feel the need to go out and like justify what was said or not said, like, whatever. It just like, clicked into place a lot of why people were acting or not interacting anymore the way they were. And I'm like, okay, now I got it. But in that interaction with that person, it was, I'm really sorry that you felt that way. I'm so sorry you feel that way. Not that I'm sorry that like I caused that or anything. You might think I caused it because my energy's too big or I'm too honest or I'm too much, all that stuff that I get sometimes. That's I can't, I'm supposed to be me. You're supposed to be you. So that's on you, how you took that in. And I am dearly, deeply sorry when people have parent issues, teacher issues, past lovers, past friends that have created situations with them that have caused some sort of damage and deep programming that they haven't yet been able to recognize and work on and move past within themselves.
Right. I mean, that brings me to my childhood. I mean, my mom was super abusive, verbally, physically, the whole thing. And not until I stopped taking it personal was when it was a turning point for me. And it really solidified that what was going on had absolutely nothing to do with me, and it was just, she herself had her own issues. So when I saw her from a place of love and understanding and not taking it personal, that's when I started to kind of shift a little bit of what I felt I should be as a person.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, it doesn't matter, in her eyes, it didn't matter how I was, who I was, or anything like that. She was going to see me the way she was seeing me, through her filter.
Exactly.
As her child. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and because she needed a trigger for her pain. She had so much pain inside of her that she looked for things to flip that switch for her so she could get it out and feel relief.
Yeah.
It wasn't because you were a bad kid or you didn't do the dishes or whatever thing that she chose to harp on in that moment.
I.e. that when I stopped taking it personal because I didn't see myself in that pain.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Because it was hers.
Yeah.
And it was a brilliant moment for me, growing as a human being. And but it was so incredibly vulnerable being in that space all the time with her.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because I was taking a chance. I was taking a big chance
with your life, with your
everything,
mental health.
Because it wasn't easy. When you're dealing with someone that has huge mental health issues, oh Lord, let me tell you, it's a struggle for sure. On the receiving end of their pain.
And that's the type of vulnerability we don't want you to take.
No.
And that's not a weakness either.
No.
But that's a type of vulnerability. You don't have to place yourself in a place of danger.
Self-preservation, people.
So and this is why the ego works so hard for us. This is why the ego is actually our friend.
Yeah.
Because if she had employed safety, which she did eventually, and had healthy boundaries and spent less time, and if the person got reactive, then she left.
Yeah.
Or she said something like, I'm going to leave if, and then she left.
Right.
So safety is a big thing. So you're building reliability with yourself that she could get herself into a safe place and not be risking her life, her mental health, stifling her spirit because somebody else's pain is inappropriately being placed on your doorstep.
And it's funny because not funny, haha, but funny.
Ironic.
Yeah. That me being vulnerable during those moments was, I think, what gave her the permission to shift a little bit.
Yeah.
She didn't like it. She didn't like it at all.
They resent it more
But
sometimes.
she did it anyway.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if she consciously knew she was doing it, but I saw it. You know, you can see that slight shift in someone when I stood very strong in my boundaries. I stood very strong in my vulnerability. And I stood very strong in not taking whatever she was saying or doing personal.
Because by her creating that safe space for herself, it also created safety. Like, everything's energy. So that safety goes out. And she's like, didn't get it, like you said, but somewhere in her subconscious, it was like, wow, I don't have to go into that death spiral of pain right now because this person's stopping that cycle.
Right. And never mind how it influenced my siblings on top of that too. You know, they all have their own journeys. But yeah, I mean, throughout that, it came into fruition with a lot of different things for them, you know, because they got to see how it looks like, feels like to sit in vulnerability with someone who's incredibly abusive. You know what I'm saying? And it was an interesting lesson. It shifted me on so many ways, but I got to understand my mom in such a different level. Got to the point where forgiveness was absolutely a must so that I can continue on in my own way. And she was, despite all her stuff, Mom is like the funniest person.
She can be the most kind, the most giving, like caring.
I focused on those parts of her, you know, as much as I could during the times when things were hard.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So it made it a little bit easier. But I mean, I saw her. I saw her for the first time in, I think I was, in my 50s at that point. I actually saw her. You know what I'm saying? And because I gave myself the space to be vulnerable and not take things personal and be able to be open to shift and see her that she was working from a place of pain. You know what I'm saying? Instead of it being like, why is she doing this to me? You know, or doing it to my siblings, or you know, like I really shifted that, and I couldn't have done it if I wasn't sitting in vulnerability. You know, when I was in the fuck this shit, you know, when I was like, no, this is not gonna happen. When I was there, I couldn't move.
Exactly.
It felt like I was moving, but I wasn't moving an inch. You know, not until I really sat in vulnerability, didn't take it personal. That was when it really, really shifted for me. And those were the times where I really, you know, when we decided to talk about vulnerability, I was thinking about where was I vulnerable? Come to realize I have been vulnerable my whole fucking entire life.
Yeah. You're always vulnerable. You're always exposed. It's just like what you do in situations that all of a sudden you're like, Mayday, and you put up all those things.
Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting. It's
okay. That leads me to talking about lobster.
Lobster.
So we're gonna go from sex to lobster. I am like Captain Random today.
Okay.
So I have a story. It's not really a story. It's truth. I don't know if you know this. I did not know about this about lobster. And when we share stories, I just want you to know that we're not just here spitting out the latest spiritual self-help bullshit. This is stuff that we've done that's helped us be more of us and feel like the spiritual beings that we truly are here. Yeah. So I was reading something about lobster, and lobsters, we know if you like them, I don't like to eat them, but they're very soft and mushy inside, the part that you eat. And the outside is very hard. It's a very hard shell. You have to crack it. Lobsters grow. We know there's all different sizes of lobsters. Now, there's not lobster shells sitting around like snail shells, like where a snail, when it gets bigger, it can leave its shell and it can go and find a new shell that's bigger and a better home for it. Right. There's not lobster shells hanging around all under the ocean. So how does a lobster grow? Because we know they grow. Right. So lobsters are these awesome creatures that as soon as it grows to a point where it's not feeling a lot of space in its shell anymore. It goes and finds a safe space for itself, or creates a safe space for itself, typically under rocks. And it sits there for a bit, and it makes sure it feels safe and solid and everything's good. And then it actually crawls out of its shell.
Really?
And it grows a new, bigger one itself. It stays in there. So this is all that like going inward. It creates like an inward space for itself, takes its armor off, totally exposed. Like it could be taken out in a second if somebody was, able to penetrate that, and it could just eat it. And it takes the time and the space to grow a new shell. And then it goes out into the world again. So this is that whole growth can happen in an instant. Or it can happen in months and years.
Yeah.
So take the time, take the space for yourself, just like the lobster.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was fascinating, and how it applies to vulnerability, and how lobster just, I don't feel enough space, and just goes right into the whole cycle, and it knows what to do. Like nature is so brilliant with us. That's why we love pet sitting when we do that, because we can watch the animals and see how they just naturally do things where we think we're the superior beings, but we have so much in our head that's built up that we're afraid of this and afraid of that, and it's crazy.
Yeah.
So use a lobster as a touchstone. If you don't know what a touchstone is, it's something that when you need to remember something, or you want to tap into something, or you want to work with a certain type of energy like vulnerability, that reminds you of that. Like get a tiny little stuffed lobster, or a little knick-knack stone lobster that, when you go to like little knick-knack shops, draw a picture of a lobster and shove it in your pocket, or put it on your fridge. Like it's something that you can actually like physically look at it or touch, that reminds you and brings you back to that place.
That's cool. That's really, really cool. So my armor, when I finally put the shield and the sword down, that was me
getting out of your
out of my shell.
Getting out of your tiny box that you'd been living in.
Exactly. And creating a bigger, better.
Now, mind you, if the lobster didn't naturally know how to do that, eventually it would start growing against this armor-hard shell, and it would start to compress and causing pain, just like people who don't get out of their boxes and don't, have a healthy way to be vulnerable because they don't have that safety and security and trust within themselves. It starts to crush your internal organs. They can die if they don't get out of that shell. And so this is the thing. It crushes your soul. It crushes your spirit to keep yourself in the same box. This is why vulnerability is a superpower and a strength, because it allows all that in you to come out. So you can have that moment, and many moments, where you light up and feel joy instead of just accepting comfortable as happy.
Yeah.
There's so much more.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. It's crazy.
Yeah. And if you want a little bit more on safety, we have a soul wisdom. There's a soul wisdom video. If you look for our soul wisdom channel, that talks about 3 ways to step into different archetypes within yourself, and tools to create that safety piece. So if you want a little more on vulnerability, go find that, go check that out.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I wrote some notes to, kind of share with you guys. It's just simple. Embrace your vulnerability. Embrace your true self, and watch your life transform. Listen, you have everything that you need. You really, really do. We are here to remind you that you are a sovereign being. Work from that place. Honor that part about you, and be as vulnerable as fuck.
Exactly. It costs way too much not to be all of you.
Absolutely.
And we can be that safe space for you if it feels right. Just reach out to us.
For sure.
All right.
Be kind.
Be kind.
Peace.